Welcome in to Outkick the Show. I am your fearless leader, Clay Travis. I hope wherever you may be across the country, across this great land, you are having a fantastic start to your week. We have got a ton of reactions to get to. I was down at the beach over the weekend. I'm recognizing how scruffy I look right now. I got to go down and shave before the afternoon telecast on Lock It In. Great gambling weekend. If you followed me on everything I said on Lock It In, we won every bet. I don't know how often that's happened. But there are a ton of topics we got to dive into here in college football in the NFL. And I want to start with the Georgia Bulldogs. Georgia Bulldog fans are a little bit like the Dallas Cowboys of college football. They vacillate between extreme confidence and extreme lack of confidence amazingly rapidly, okay? All it takes, every Georgia fan, is a pent-up glass case of emotion that is being able to break up at any moment at all. And what happened over the weekend was Georgia fell victim to the quintessential college football upset. That, when I say quintessential college football upset, I don't mean a game where one team just gets beaten by another one. I mean where a lot of statistical anomalies combine to make people believe that what happened in one 60-minute sequence perpetually defines the entire season. Let's break this down a little bit. First of all, Georgia gave up 4 turnovers, got none themselves. One of those turnovers was returned for a touchdown. Georgia's defense only gave up 13 points in this game, despite going through double overtime. Georgia outgained South Carolina by nearly 200 yards. Their stud quarterback had an awful game, but he also got bad luck. Georgia doesn't squeeze a pass in overtime. It bounces off the receiver's hands, goes right to the same South Carolina defensive back, who ended up with 3 picks. Now, you can argue that this means that Georgia is not very good. What I'm more inclined to believe is that this was a statistical anomaly along the lines of Ohio State losing at home in 2014 to Virginia Tech, Alabama losing at home to Ole Miss when they turned the ball over 5 times in 2015, and Florida losing at home to Ole Miss in 2008. What do all 3 of those home losses by teams that I referenced, Florida in 08, Ohio State in 14, and Florida in 15 have in common? All 3 of those teams went on to win the national championship, despite the fact that they lost home games to drastically inferior opponents. So, I believe that Georgia will bounce back from this. In the grand scheme of things, in the college football playoff picture, all this means is Georgia doesn't have a mulligan anymore. The Bulldogs were going to need to go into the playoff one of 2 ways. Either they were going to go 3 ways. Either they were going to go 13-0, they were going to go 12-1, and the 12-1 with the loss being in the SEC title game after arriving there at 12, or 12-0, or they were going to go because they won the SEC championship despite the fact that they were 12-1. Okay? When you actually break that down, Georgia didn't actually lose very much in the grand scheme of things from a perspective of actually chasing a championship. They just had their mulligan disappear. Just like happened with Florida in 08, just like happened with Ohio State in 2014, and just like happened with Alabama in 2015, all 3 of those teams lost to inferior teams at home, went on to win out and win national championships. So, I understand that Georgia fans want to absolutely panic. I understand that there is a need in college football to treat every game like it's a massive statement on the trajectory of a program overall. What I would suggest is that this was a statistical anomaly. It was an aberrant result, and Georgia still controls its own fate as it pertains to being able to go to the college football playoff, but now they have to win out. I don't know whether they can do that or not, but it's worth contemplating and breaking down. Okay, let's go to the other 2 big college football games while I'm talking college football. I thought that Florida played as well as they could have on the offensive side of the ball against LSU. If you watch that game on Saturday night, Florida had the opportunity all game long to fold. Third and long after third and long, dropping back to pass, Kyle Trask made plays for the Gators. But ultimately, LSU was in a different category than Florida was. Couple of stats that are going to blow your mind. LSU ran 46 plays if you take out the kneel down. They averaged over 11 yards per play against the Florida Gators, who were supposed to be one of the best defenses in all of college football. Over 11 yards per play. Over 9 yards per rush, which is pretty wild in and of itself. And I've never even seen this stat before. I want you to listen closely on this. Florida only forced LSU to a third down 4 times in this game. Have you ever heard of that happening? I want to repeat that stat again because I like to look at box scores and stats and data so I don't just get distracted by all the bright, shiny things that happen while I'm watching a game. The great Florida Gator defense only forced LSU to third down 4 times in the entire game. I've never seen a team have that few of third down conversions. Why were there only 4 third down attempts? Because LSU was driving all over Florida all night long. Without an unbelievable performance by Kyle Trask, LSU would have won this game by 20 plus, maybe 28 plus. Kyle Trask kept Florida as close as they could, but LSU is just a different level. That's why we're going to get to this in a little bit, that's why I've got LSU as my overall #1 team in college football. I don't know how many of you watched Penn State, Iowa, but I watch everything in college football. And we nearly had a debacle of seismic proportions in the Penn State-Iowa game. First of all, tap the veins, boys and girls. The blood bank guarantee, I believe, is now 6-2 on the year. Pretty extraordinary start to the year for the blood bank guarantee. If you've just been blindly betting my blood bank guarantee, you have been killing it. I think the only game we haven't covered 1 week was Alabama against Ole Miss because of a late touchdown pass that knocked us out of a tie. And then we had a split blood bank last week with Auburn against Florida. But bigger issue here. Penn State scored up 7-6 a touchdown. They went to instant replay review. I don't know how many of you were watching this. And they took the Penn State touchdown off the board, which made absolutely no sense whatsoever. And it's not going to get a lot of attention because Penn State went on to win. But this could have ended up determining the outcome of the game and could have gone a long way towards determining who represents the Big Ten in Chicago. So Indianapolis, this story standing alone is a massive one. And I think the Big Ten needs to explain what exactly happened here and why it occurred, because that's a big miss to have happen this many years into instant replay. Having said that, Penn State withstood the challenge from Iowa, surged to 6-0, and I think they're going to end Michigan's hopes in the Big Ten East for a 5th straight year for Jim Harbaugh not winning the Big Ten East, and knock Michigan out of the Big Ten race this weekend in Happy Valley. All right, there's the college football discussion. I was down at the beach this weekend. And we were flying out of Pensacola because all the airlines were taken at Panama City Beach. So we drove down to Pensacola, and I took my family into a Buffalo Wild Wings, and we sat and we watched the Titans' performance while we were eating at the Buffalo Wild Wings. Got to find somewhere with NFL Sunday Ticket. That is one of the worst performances that I have ever seen an NFL offense put forward in my life. And you guys know I'm a Titans fan. Arthur Smith, the offensive coordinator, is in over his head. John Robinson, the GM, has given guaranteed contracts to 5 of the worst offensive linemen that I have ever seen take the field together for an NFL team. A lot of focus is going to go out on Marcus Mariota and Ryan Tannehill in that debate. My suggestion to you is the quarterback doesn't matter. The quarterback does not matter at all in this game because the offensive line is so bad. The offensive line for the Titans is one of the worst offensive lines I have ever seen. There needs to be significant answering for the flaws made on designing and paying and implementing this offensive line. It's unbelievably bad. So props to the Broncos for getting the win, but in 3 of the last 4 weeks, the Titans have scored 7-7-0. 7-7-0. I don't know how many teams are out there. I haven't looked at the full scoreboard, but if the Titans had merely scored 21 points each game, just 21 in the first 6, they would be 6-0. They haven't given up more than 20 points to any opponent. They have lost games giving up 19, giving up 20, giving up 16, and giving up 14. That's hard to watch. When your team is not even giving up 3 touchdowns in the entire game, and yet you still can't win. Having said that, I think this might have been the death knell for both Marcus Mariota and Jameis Winston. It's been a debate for 5 years, ever since they were drafted. I think it's time nearly to say that both of these guys stink, and neither one of them is going to succeed, either with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers or with the Tennessee Titans. They might let Jameis Winston continue to play with the Bucs because they don't have a backup. I think Ryan Griffin is the backup for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They turned the ball over, Jameis Winston turned the ball over, I should say, 6 times on the road against the Carolina Panthers. It's one of the worst performances that has ever occurred at the quarterback position. I don't know what Bruce Arians is looking for, but Jameis Winston ain't the answer, and I don't think the Titans are that close. I really wish the Titans were in the tank for a top draft pick position because I think there's a lot of smoke and mirrors about the Titans being close. I don't think they are remotely close to being in any way competitive in this division. Speaking of competitive in this division, Houston Texans, I believe right now, are the second best team in the AFC. Now, I said a couple of weeks ago when the Chiefs went up against the Lions and were fortunate to win that I was troubled, even though they were 4-0, by the Chiefs' inability to run the football and by their inability to stop the run. That got exploited the last 2 weeks by the Colts and by the Texans on the road in Kansas City. How did they exploit it? They exploited it by running the football and keeping the ball out of Patrick Mahomes' hand. You go look at the box score. The Texans had the ball for almost 40 minutes, leaning on that defense, which isn't very good at all. They've played a lot of snaps already in Kansas City, turning around, quick turnaround on a Thursday. I believe the Broncos are going to beat the Chiefs, and the Chiefs are going to lose their 3rd straight game. I really do believe that's going to happen. That defense is going to have trouble getting back up after all the snaps they played, and I think the Broncos will win an ugly, low-scoring game against the Chiefs with that game taking place on Thursday night. But props to the Texans. I'm incredibly impressed with Deshaun Watson. The Texans' offensive line is starting to round into shape. They're starting to finally protect him. Love what they have with Will Fuller, Kenny Stills, and obviously with DeAndre Hopkins in terms of playmakers down the field. That's a team that is trending in the right direction. Team that's trending in the wrong direction. How about the Dallas Cowboys? 3rd straight loss, this time to Sam Darnold coming off of mono. This is an incredibly difficult position to find yourself in if you're a Dallas Cowboy fan. You were dreaming of the Miami Super Bowl 3 weeks ago. Then you go on the road against the Saints, can't put up any points, lose 12-10. Then you come back home, Aaron Rodgers is the man of your nightmares, destroys you again. Now 7-2 all-time, Aaron Rodgers against the Dallas Cowboys. And then you come back home, and what happens the third go-around? You go on the road against the Jets, who haven't won a game, and you lose. This is ominous. I think this is very ominous for the Dallas Cowboys. I don't feel good about the big extension they're going to give Dak Prescott. I don't feel good about them being a contender in the NFC, which suddenly looks like it's stacked with top teams. We'll talk about top 5, bottom 5 tomorrow. But when you actually break down the NFC right now, the team that has surged out of the cellar and looks incredibly good, you know who it is. It is the San Francisco 49ers. 5-0 on the year. They went and dominated Sean McVay and the St. Louis and the LA Rams. The Rams got absolutely lobotomized. It's time maybe to ask the question. NFL defenses eventually catch up with everyone. Have NFL defenses caught up with Sean McVay's offense? Todd Gurley makes $15 million a year, and he's a no-show. His career almost seems like it's over. Jared Goff just got $100 million plus guaranteed, the most in the history of the NFL, and he threw for under 100 yards when you subtract sacks. What the NFL teaches us, it's a cliche, but the NFL stands for not for long. Unless you are a pocket passer who can consistently be accurate, read defenses, and deliver on 3rd and 8, you don't last in this league. The only position that really lasts is quarterback, kicker, and maybe punter. That's it. And the reality is Sean McVay's offense had a flash in the pan couple of years where it was virtually unstoppable. But look at what's happening with Andy Reid. Look at what's happening with Sean McVay. Everybody's starting to catch up to what they are doing, and they're figuring out. They throw out a lot of different things in the NFL. It's like a laboratory for football. And when somebody has success, they keep refining it. And I think the book is now out on Sean McVay. Once Todd Gurley turned into an average running back and maybe below average running back, the passing attack isn't as open as it used to be. The ability to throw the ball to Todd Gurley isn't there like it used to be. This offense just looks downright average. McVay has lost 3 in a row. Todd Gurley's career looks like it's basically finished, and I'm not optimistic about what's going forward for them. Plus, in LA, 49er fans took over the Coliseum. Big win for them on the road. Speaking of not optimistic, Baker Mayfield might be the worst starting quarterback in the NFL right now. Everything about the Cleveland Browns is a disaster. They're going to lose next week and fall to 2-5. All that talk in the offseason, I told you guys. I sat back about Baker Mayfield and I said, look, I am all for disrupting the existing power structure of the NFL, right? I'm all for experimenting, trying new things. It's kind of the story of my career. But don't change things just to change. And what I said about Baker Mayfield coming into this season, you can go back and listen, is I said, look, how many times has Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, or Russell Wilson ever said anything that provides bulletin board material to the opponent? Never. Baker Mayfield had an opportunity to try to follow in those guys' footsteps, establish that he's a good quarterback, and find a way to be comfortable in his own skin while standing within the construct of what's been a really successful quarterback trio. Instead, in one off season, Baker Mayfield said and did more to fire up his opponents than Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, and Russell Wilson have ever done in their entire career. He became an internet meme. He became a celebrity before he became a really good NFL quarterback. And the result is he's getting exposed now in year 2. I think certainly there are other aspects to this that are not good. Freddie Kitchens' team is not disciplined. Odell Beckham Jr. is overrated. He has been his entire career. All wide receivers, to be frank, are overrated. We pay a lot of attention to them, but ultimately all that matters is their quarterback. And I think they're falling on their face as a result. Speaking of falling on his face, I asked an interesting question for you guys in the universe of the Carolina Panthers. Cam Newton lost 8 games in a row before he decided to pull himself out and do that French YouTube video where he had like the scarf on and he was drinking wine and smoking a cigar, and he announced that he was hurt and he wasn't going to come back till he's 100%. I think there's a possibility that Kyle Allen has Wally pipped Cam Newton. And the reason why I think that's happened is Kyle Allen's won 4 in a row this year. The offense looks much better. Christian McCaffrey looks much better. And how in the world do you put Cam Newton back in and pull out Kyle Allen in the process? It doesn't make any sense at all when you break down where Cam Newton is. And that's why I said on my radio show this morning, I got a provocative idea. Could Cam Newton be traded before October 29th? I don't know if there's a team that's willing to make a move that thinks that they're a quarterback away from being able to contend for a Super Bowl, but is it possible that the Carolina Panthers just decide to let Cam Newton go? 83% of you, 24,000 of you voted, and said it makes no sense whatsoever to replace Cam Newton, put Cam Newton back in and to replace Kyle Allen. I agree with you. When you got a winning quarterback, you don't mess with it. Even if an injury happened, I wouldn't bring Cam Newton back if I were the Panthers. I think it might be time for the Panthers to think about trying to leave behind Cam Newton. Speaking of a guy who doesn't want to be left behind, Drew Brees. Not back yet, but one of the great stories of the NFL so far has been Teddy Bridgewater. One on the road against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Minshew Mania no-showed. And Teddy Bridgewater is now 4-0 as a starter stepping in for Drew Brees. There's no way, if you talk to the average Saints fan, that they would have ever believed that 4-0 with Teddy Bridgewater was possible when Drew Brees went out after the beatdown that the Saints took against the Rams. Goes on the road and beats the Seahawks. That's the only loss that the Seahawks have so far this year. Comes back home and beats Dallas. Then now he's gone on the road and won against Jacksonville, beats Jameis Winston and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as well. Teddy Bridgewater is one of the best stories we have seen in a very, very long time in the NFL. It's hard not to be rooting for this guy. Love rooting for the Saints, who I believe are the best team in the NFC. In fact, if I had to pick right now what teams I think will meet in the Super Bowl, we're 6 weeks through the season, I would pick the Saints back with Drew Brees going up against the Patriots in Miami on the Fox Super Bowl, which should be pretty awesome for us for Lock It In. The Steelers took over L.A. If you watched that game last night, what are the Chargers doing? Why did they move to L.A.? They have no fan base. They're moving into a new stadium. Nobody wants to buy their tickets. They can't even sell out a 25,000-seat soccer arena. The only way they sell it out is by the opposing team coming in and taking it over. I think this is a complete mess. I think that if you were really trying to give the Chargers advice, you would tell them to go back hat in hand to San Diego. Don't go to L.A. You don't need two teams in L.A. You're going to be the redheaded stepchild of L.A. The Rams are going to be somewhat popular there. The Raiders are probably still the most popular franchise, and they're going to be even closer to L.A. in Vegas. This is a bad move for the Chargers team, which has fallen on its face. You have to wonder, as they get ready to come to town to play the awful Titans, whether the Phillip Rivers era is basically coming to a close. He looks old, and the Chargers don't look good at all. All right, I think I hit every one of the stories that I wanted to hit on the NFL, on college football. And so I've got a couple of thoughts here for you. I want to give you my Heisman top four. My Heisman top four, 7 weeks through the season in college football. I've got Tua, number 1, Joe Burrow, number 2, Jalen Hurts, number 3, and Justin Fields, number 4 overall. Okay, I got those all in order. My top 4, Tua, Joe Burrow, Jalen Hurts, Justin Fields. Somebody said about the Vikings. I should mention about the Vikings. Kirk Cousins needs to apologize more often. We're going to be talking about the Vikings on Lock It In a moment. They dominated against the Eagles, coming the week off the domination they put on the Giants. I loved everything that I saw from Diggs, who was wide open all day. Kirk Cousins apologized to Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs, and since that moment, it's like they've remade the offense on the fly. I really like the Vikings at 4-2. They've been my pick to win the NFC North for a while. I'm much more confident in that right now, 2 weeks after back-to-back wins, than I was by far before when they were sitting at 2-2 and the quarterbacks and the wide receivers were feuding. All right, my national top 10 in order. LSU is the best football team in the nation. They have the best 2 wins of any team that is in college football right now, and they have no losses, and the teams that they have beaten with ease. Joe Burrow has been phenomenal. LSU goes on the road and beats Texas and Austin. Now they beat Florida. I told you that they only had 4 third downs, that they dominated all day long. LSU is my number 1 team in the nation. My number 2 team is Alabama. Tua versus Burrow, I believe in November, will be a battle not just for the SEC West crown and potentially for the SEC and also potentially for the national title, but also for the Heisman Trophy. Whichever quarterback performs better there, I believe, will win the Heisman Trophy. Ohio State, I've got number 3 overall. They haven't been challenged all season. Not going to start this weekend against Northwestern either. Number 4, I've got Oklahoma. The Sooners got the win over Texas. Wasn't that close of a game. I think Oklahoma will go 13-0 and be in the college football playoff. In the 5 spot, I have got Wisconsin. In the 6th spot, Wisconsin continues to dominate everybody. One bad week of play against Northwestern. In the 6th spot, I've got Penn State. The Nittany Lions, 6-0. I think they're going to go to 7-0 this week against Michigan. In the 7th spot, I have got the Florida Gators. Even though they lost, I thought that Kyle Trask played phenomenally well and that he was outstanding. I thought it went really, really well. In the 8th spot, I have got Clemson. The Tigers still haven't played anybody. They're potentially going to become the first playoff team ever to not play a single team that finishes the season in the top 25. That's unheard of. In the 9 spot, I've got the Georgia Bulldogs. Again, I talked about off the jump here why I believe the Georgia performance was a statistical anomaly. Auburn, I have got in the 10 spot, and that's my 1 to 10 Outkick national top 10. To repeat, 1 LSU, 2 Bama, 3 Ohio State, 4 Oklahoma. Those would be my 4 playoff teams if the season ended today. 5 Wisconsin, 6 Penn State, 7 Florida, 8 Clemson, 9 Georgia, 10 Auburn. All right, SEC power rankings. Big win for Tennessee. I told you I thought that number of 7 was way too high for Mississippi State. Jeremy Pruitt won a circle the wagons game. The Vols have a chance after the Bama game, assuming Bama doesn't injure every player on the team. They have a chance to go out and get bowl eligible or at least get to 5 wins, which would equal last year, would make it a mediocre year but not a disastrous year. This was an important win because it took out of play 2-10, 3-9, all those awful things. 6-6 potentially in play. You can start to talk about it if Tennessee can beat South Carolina in 2 weeks. But in the meantime, here is my SEC top 14. All right, are you ready? LSU 1, Bama 2, Florida 3, Georgia 4, Auburn 5, Missouri 6, South Carolina 7, Texas A&M 8, Ole Miss 9, Tennessee 10, Mississippi State 11, Kentucky 12, Arkansas 13, and Vanderbilt 14. Those are my SEC power rankings after Week 7. I love all of you. My name is Clay Travis. This is Outkick the Show. If you enjoyed it, share it with your friends. DBAP unless you need to SBAP. I'll be live on Lock It In 45 minutes. Monday edition. Much to discuss there. Appreciate all of you. Kisses. See you guys tomorrow. Love you. Thank you, Facebook. See y'all.